Good morning, everyone. Welcome to December's Borough Board. We have a full agenda before us. So to get started, can I get a motion on the adoption of the December 18th Borough Board agenda, which is before you upon your entrance?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Against?
Aye.
Opposed? No, sorry, okay, good. Adoption of the November 20th Borough Board minutes, which were emailed to you. We've had no request for any amendments or changes, so can I get a motion to adopt? So move. Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, thank you. Our first part, we have a full, at some point we'll break to take a vote on 384B4 land dispensation for EDC. So once we have members of City Council here, we'll take a break from the presentation to take a vote. We're happy to be joined by City Council Member Chin and City Council Member Mark Levine, so thank you. And it's appropriate because both of our presentations are in your areas. We have parks and seniors presentations today, so that's great. Our first presentation is on the Community Parks Initiative, and the presenter is Jennifer Gardner, Senior Project Planner, New York City Department of Parks and Recreation.
No?
Jennifer? Okay.
I'll show you the vlog.
That's yours.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Good.
Hi everybody, actually maybe I'll do this, it feels a little bit more, a little better to see you all. And also I apologize if you can't hear me, but this is about max volume I have right now. So let me know if you need me to repeat something. So again, my name is Jennifer Gardner. I'm a senior project planner at the Parks Department. I've been working with a pretty large group of people from across the agency on the Community Parks Initiative for about the past year. And I think this is something that many of you, or at least some of you, have seen a lot of. And so, you know, I'm hoping not to be too repetitive, but I would like to just take a brief opportunity at least to run through kind of how we arrived at this site that we chose for this program, what the kind of rationale behind that was, something that might be a useful thing for this crowd, and then sort of what our next steps are, as well as sort of the components of the program itself. So we're here reporting to this guy, as well as our commissioner, who sort of share the vision that we developed in the planning division of parks to work towards a sort of brighter, greener, more inclusive future. And to get there, we've set out to achieve a more equitable park system through an approach that involves about 9 initiatives. These are the first steps, essentially, in meeting those goals. So the Community Parks Initiative, as you can see, is really just one of a number of different approaches. You've probably already seen the capital tracker as a portion of our attempt to streamline the capital process and make information a bit more transparent. Information about Community Parks Initiative parks is available through that system. We've also begun sort of more intensive studies in terms of utilization. We're working on strategies for parkland acquisition, as well as looking at regional parks that serve areas not unlike those that are served through the Community Parks Initiative, but are a different sort of park that have a wider variety of amenities and potential to serve a broader population. So just to let you know that there's a lot more happening that we're working towards developing. But the Community Parks Initiative itself is really focused on these smaller neighborhood parks that serve that group of folks that live within the 10-minute walk radius that we're always looking to improve. So in order to do that, we're looking to also gather the input of people who are actually using those parks. And that is one of the ways that we're better targeting the $130 million that includes both mayoral funding and contributions from borough presidents and council members, as well as some grant sources from the state to sort of leverage the desires of the community with the needs of the, to meet the needs of the park system overall. So just to run through some of those numbers, because it's probably of interest to this crowd. We're working on 35 neighborhood parks in this first phase of the program. We're targeting, however, 55 separate communities, and that's through a full combination of each of the components of the program, which I'll run through as we go along.
We only care about Manhattan.
Yes, yes. Well,
I'm being a little
focus on that.
facetious.
So I'll focus
Poor
on that.
Mark
and
has to care about
and
everything.
spending energy. But overall, this is $111 million in mayoral funding citywide that we're targeting to these densely populated, growing, and lower income communities. So I'll show you a little bit of the mapping that we did in that analysis as well. We are enforcing community building as a really key element of making any park successful in the long term. So we are expanding our resources, that Partnership for Parks, which is that joint program between the City Parks Foundation and the Parks Department, in order to have outreach coordinators available to really specifically help these 35 parks and the surrounding communities along in this initial stage. We're increasing playground associates to provide programs for kids and activate parks during the daytime in the spring and summer and early fall months, and increasing maintenance staff through the city council contribution. So that's just a little bit. So extending beyond the mayoral funding, we have the ability to again leverage outside funding sources, increase incremental maintenance and gardening staff. City Parks Foundation has a prioritized pot of money that we're working with them to focus on in certain ways in city community parks initiative areas. And then we're also really excited about working with DEP. So this is sort of the more broad-reaching part of our partnership with other agencies where we are able to implement stormwater infrastructure management systems on a number of our sites, and they've committed $36 million to that part of the project. So the next section is really just to run a little bit through the development of the program, and I'll keep this hopefully as brief as I can. We have a lot of text on the slides, and a lot of this information is available in more depth in our report, which I wanted to bring to share with you all today, but we ran out of copies. It's been a hot item, but you can find it online on the website, and we can send some over if that's of interest. So to put it in context, we began by looking at the capital investment in a certain kind of category of parks across the city. So this doesn't include certain smaller sites or sites like schoolyards to playgrounds where we did recent projects that had joint jurisdiction, but broadly speaking, we were looking at what we're currently doing, what we've done in the past, and what we've missed. So while we have about 400 active capital projects, that's $750 million in investment, and we've spent nearly $6 billion on parks throughout the last 20 years, we identified this subset of 215 small parks that had not had a sort of minimal amount of investment over the last 2 decades. And so that is where the focus on the small community parks came from. We wanted to understand how we could prioritize a limited amount of funding that we had in our budget. So we really began with this process of trying to assess where demand would be highest and where need might be greatest. So we did a sort of demographic analysis of quite a few factors, but landed on growth, density, and percentage of folks living below the federal poverty line. And when you overlay those characteristics, it's sort of hard to see in this light, but the super dark gray areas are those where those characteristics align. So we wanted to just use a screen that was as objective as possible, aligning that with our investment analysis to identify parks that needed the investment that were potentially serving areas of higher need. So from there, we did a more qualitative screen and actually went out and surveyed the 130 plus parks that remained on our list based on that sort of more data-based analysis. And we found quite a few parks that were in desperate need of repair, and we tried our best to sort of prioritize how we would approach those. So through the past year, we have landed on a number of sites. So this is also challenging to read in this light, but available online as well. It's a quick summary snapshot of how we ended up focusing on communities, which here are represented in a gray sort of blanket underlying the dots. The red dots are our selected capital projects, the 35 parks that we're improving through this program. And I'll get into in just a minute briefly some of the components of the program that we're hoping will help us to sort of leverage that capital investment by extending programming, some targeted improvements, which are more like quick fixes, things that we can do with existing parks resources in-house, and increase the quality of those parks where we're doing that work as well. So again, these sort of 3 components that fill out that map that we're hoping to continue to fill in further. leveraging that capital investment through partnership building, through extended programming, and through increased maintenance. So this is where we're going here. That's kind of a bigger citywide picture. In Manhattan alone, we're investing more than $31 million. We're working on Carmensville Playground, St. Nicholas Playground North, James Weldon Johnson Playground, Martin Luther King, White Playground, Playground 103, all in northern Manhattan. And then on the Lower East Side, Saul Lane, Luther Gulick, and Henry M. Jackson. And some of these you'll recognize as projects that are already underway. For example, with White Playground and Luther Gulick, we were able to work with projects that were already of great interest in the community and complete them. We're adding a comfort station through CPI to Gulick, for example.
Can you explain, Jennifer, why a few neighborhoods are zones but don't have parks, and what does it mean for Morningside Heights?
That's a great question, and what we wanted to do was find as many opportunities as we could through that sort of objective screening process, and those identified a number of places where we hope to be able to expand our work in the future. And so we've highlighted zones that have the need for capital work at certain parks, but in the interim, we're targeting those for other targeted improvements and programming. So, for example, on the west side, you see that we're actually a little bit outside of the area. It's just on the border where that dot shows up. But the community to the north had the demographic profile that matched what we're looking to do. So, same with further north. We have a targeted improvement sort of way out there that's a bit of an outlier, but we're hoping to kind of connect the dots literally on the map with more dots on the map to show you in the future.
Okay.
And zooming in a bit and maybe explaining a bit more about what those targeted improvement and playground associate sites look like, sort of on the spread of the community. We're working, for example, and this is, some of these are tentative, and we're in the process of scoping out the work for those targeted improvement projects, and so we can continue to keep you all posted on what the final version of that looks like for the spring. But it's not it's something that we do anyway, and we'll continue to focus those resources on these communities. So, for example, here we have this kind of cluster of capital projects, but expanding out beyond that, we're addressing Joseph Sauer Park, Playground 1, and Strauss Playground as targeted improvement sites, and then coupling that with program extensions at Seward Park, Tompkins Square Park, and I think there's something else that I'm just not seeing there. But that's kind of one example of how we're hoping the sort of synergies of those improvements work together. And this is, a borough we can ignore for now, but similarly a concentration of impact that we're hoping to see in northern Manhattan as well. So to get into a little bit of detail about what those targeted improvements look like, we will be working with our 5 borough shops and crews, as well as with borough resources to address kind of the cosmetic issues that are at many of these sites. Repainting, resurfacing, repairing play equipment, hanging new swing seats where they're missing, and then horticultural work, and that's something that we've been able to do with the extended gardening staff afforded through the council plan, for example. So it's just sort of a quick snapshot of the type of work we would be doing through that portion of the program. On the partnership side, we're thinking about this in really 3 categories, working with, again, the Partnerships for Parks folks and the City Parks Foundation to provide resources at the sort of most grassroots community level. And we're doing that in a number of ways. I'm happy to answer some questions about how that's playing out at the moment as we're beginning our scoping sessions. We're also, again, partnering with agencies. For example, DEP's contribution of the $36 million for stormwater infrastructure. We're also working at a number of sites that have joint jurisdiction with Department of Education, so they're a key partner, NYCHA as well, and other agencies that provide similar services like OCS. And then citywide, we're also sort of tackling the question of how we work with some of our bigger parks partners, as well as groups that are just interested in providing programming and connecting to the CPI initiative as a way to reach their target audiences as well. Okay, and again on the programming and maintenance side, this is relatively straightforward, but we're increasing staff for maintenance, and then part of that is the Playground Associate group of folks who will be out at a number of parks that were those sort of gray crosses on the map, expanding active recreational programming for kids and adults. And then this is where we're moving forward. So right now we're in the process of holding scope meetings for all of these 35 parks. We're doing that all before the end of January of 2015. So it means I'm at a lot of community meetings, which is why I can't speak anymore, I think.
They're going really well, though. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's great to hear. And I think we're getting a variable turnout, and it speaks a lot to the type of work that we're going to need to do in different communities. We're learning a lot about that process as well.
Have all the scoping meetings been scheduled?
They have all been scheduled.
I wasn't aware that Carmen'sville Playground had been scheduled.
That's a project that we're doing through the regular capital process. So that's not part of this regular schedule. That would be a normal scoping project to make it keep going fast. So that's the reason.
Do you know when it'll be?
I can check and get back to you.
Yeah.
But all of this will be completed by January. All the scoping will be completed by January, so that we can go to the public scoping meeting, so that we can then go to the community boards in February at the latest with our scopes, and then move, as we always do, and then come back after we hear from the community boards, then come back to them with the schematic design. And then, of course, we then go to the public design. But we're trying to move this fast. But at the same time, also get a lot of input from the community. So the scoping sessions have been really great. We have an average of, I'd say, 20 to 30 public participants, sometimes more. It's very helpful when the community boards and the elected officials are able to get the word out. That helps tremendously. And it's great because we've gotten a lot of interesting input. Our capital projects division, we have landscape architects there, several of them. And we put out a map of the property, of the site, and then everyone gets to move things around and sort of, they can really see it and come up with ideas. We do individual tables with groups of about 5 or 6 people. It's sort of we brainstorm. There are landscape architects there to guide them and also answer questions and elicit information that is important to any designers. So it's a really good process, and I think the community boards will be very pleased with the input that they will be receiving when we come to their parks committees or their geographic areas in Board 1, for example. So I think it's a really good process, and I encourage people to be involved, and of course we'll let the elected officials know obviously what's going on every step of the way, as well as the community.
Sorry, you look like you have a question before
And
we move on.
scoping meetings are the dates online somewhere? Or?
We do, yeah. So in addition to an online feedback form that's available for every site, which is another thing to highlight for you guys, the dates are available online as they become as they're coming up on the calendar. So we actually should try to make sure that we have the remaining scopes now that they're all scheduled available, so you can see the full.
I think we need a little bit more. People who go love them, but we need more information about them.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
mean, people who go love them, but you
right
need more
on
info.
Gulick Park, and I had no idea.
Yeah, well, Gulick Park is actually an example, like Carmen'sville, where because there's been such a robust community process there's a plan that already exists for the
Right.
park. And
But then you need to put that up on the web so people understand.
yeah, right.
That's a good
exactly,
idea.
like
Put it up so that
visuals.
people understand.
Yeah, we'll do that. That's
Yeah,
good.
and this is very much a sort of work in process in terms of doing things a little bit differently for how much we open the process to public input, and we're learning a lot of things along the way. So, yes.
Let me also just quickly say that it's not just about the capital project. The idea here, as Jennifer has said, and the capital sort of gets a little more attention at the outset, which makes sense, but it's really to involve the community on an ongoing basis and to provide recreational programming for the community, which can be a wide range of things. It's not just a playground staff person there. We're looking to bring other types of programs that the community wants and have regular meetings with the community on an ongoing basis, and I mean frequent, every other month. It could be every month if we do that sometimes in different parks. But the point being that we engage the community, get them to be advocates, as Jennifer said, in working with our outreach coordinators and with the borough commissioner and staff and the local district staff, and get our recreation staff to engage with them so that we start to make it so it's a playground or a park that everyone can be proud of and say, this is a great park. It's in great shape. We have programs going on. I'm a member of the community, I get to work with my friends and we put on a great harvest event, and then we do something in the spring or whatever. It's to really make it come alive, and that's the whole point. It's not just a capital renovation. There will be programming, there'll be getting the community involved to get organized so that we make it a better park, and we look at the problems. What are the issues? Well, somebody plays the trumpet there every Saturday night, drives us crazy. Okay, let's work on that with the local precinct, and things of that nature, so we can look at it in a whole way.
Christine,
Yeah, part of the maintenance, you're going to increase providing watering. Are you including watering?
Yes, we'll look at irrigation where it makes sense, absolutely. That would be the best way to provide ongoing watering. You can time it, so the timers come on, it automatically waters,
So
so
you're
yes.
going to include automatic watering in
Sure.
your projects?
Absolutely.
Oh, that's a big thing. Are you going to do that for the other capital project you're underway also?
On just all general capital projects, yes.
So if we have capital project underway, we can ask for automatic watering?
Yes, you can,
Well, it's big news.
of course.
It's huge news.
So just ask for everything you could possibly desire.
Well, no, I just want
Yes,
to
yeah.
ask, I mean, get.
Yeah, it's not that expensive, it really isn't. So,
Well,
as
whenever
long as
we
you have
ask-
the water source, it's
Whenever
fine.
we ask, it seems like,
I
No,
think
that's the first time I've heard of this
infrastructure that's
request.
already there is always a challenge, but since we're going in and doing
Yes.
wholesale renovations on
Yes.
these 35 sites, it's way more of a
Mhm.
possibility.
we have Gigi and then Toby next.
Hi, so, good morning, Commissioner.
Morning, Judy.
So CB3 has 3 parks that are on the list, and, you know, we are grateful for any investment in our parks. We have over a third of our capital priorities are in the parks area. I think the challenge that we are facing with this plan is really around process. If you look at our list, none of the 3 parks identified that are on the CB3 priority list for a variety of reasons. For example, Bullock Park, when we met with the advocates in the group there, they actually said, we don't want to be on your priority list because we've been working with parks over many years on getting state funding, they've raised private funding. So like that park, in our view, is pretty well taken care of in terms of investment over time, right? And I think that had the community board been better engaged, that the list presented for us, we think would be different, right? And so my understanding is that the determination for the next round of parks is underway for this initiative, and we'd really like to be a larger part of the process and have some more input and be better engaged in how those decisions are made. And I would just also stress that, you know, we did bring up kind of more outreach around these meetings because we got 3 days notice for the scoping meeting for Soling. So I think a great idea and moving forward, and we have a very active Parks Committee, as you know, and a very engaged board and board office around parks, and so we really want to use this as an opportunity to work together and move forward in that way.
Yeah, I just want to say, you know, we agree with that. The way this was set up, inevitably at some point, you're not able, at least when it's first initiated, to have perhaps all the consultation you like to have. We were not unmindful of that. And we certainly think that's a very good idea if we do get additional funds. We definitely want to have more input. And with Luther Gulick, you're right, we worked very long and hard with the community on this and very successfully. And we included in CPI because we still didn't have enough money to do the entire park. But now we do, thanks to its inclusion in CPI. We wanted to make sure we could do the entire park. It's a very large one, as you know. And we also tried to group them around somewhat where feasible. So we knew that we wouldn't get to all the priorities. Rome wasn't built in a day, and we couldn't do all the priorities anyway. So we recognize that, and if this is successful and we get support from you, and we go into another round, what have you, we obviously will be paying very close attention to the priorities of the community.
I just have one suggestion, when it gets to the community board, like the Parks Committee, Board 3, then maybe you could put extra effort into getting people there from parks and maybe do something similar that you did in the scoping, because they haven't had a chance to do it. right? I mean, I'm just saying, so you might have to do a little bit of repetition.
Yeah, I will say that. I mean, part of the goal in going back is to make sure that we've heard the feedback that we've gotten through those public spoken meetings
Right.
in the right way, and we're doing that same sort of robust outreach process to get more people, get everyone who came to the scoping meeting to attend that.
Okay, but then,
meeting
and then maybe
and
do
beyond.
something,
Yeah, I think the one note to make too is that we have to be very, very mindful of our capital timeline that we've committed
Right,
to for this
right.
process, and any additional meetings that we have where we're soliciting further input that will dramatically change the scope of the work at each park will push that back a number of additional months.
I have Toby up next. Toby.
Yeah, I'm Toby Bergman, I don't have a sign yet. I'm new chair of Community Board 2. And I think Community Board 2 appropriately is not part of this for several reasons. But I had one question. So you mentioned the Borough Cruise, 5 Borough Cruise involvement. And I was wondering, to what extent this is a 5 Borough Cruise project, and if it's going to, the crews are actually going to be expanded permanently with respect to it, and finally, is there going to be any focus on the management of the crews?
I can say that the 5 Borough involvement is limited to a particular subset of those targeted improvement projects.
Yeah,
They
why
are
don't I
working on-
just,
Yeah, the
well,
sports
it's
code.
a combination of the boroughs. Each borough we have tradespeople. And the 5 Borough is this citywide unit, it works out of Randall's Island, and they have the same trades, only enhanced somewhat. So they're doing sport coating, basically. The 5 Borough crews are doing the sport coating, the repainting of the lines and the basketball courts. The borough, each individual borough's trades are going in. For example, we're replacing the backboards, putting the new polycarbonate backboards that really, class it up, make it look neat. The kids love it, adults like it. We're replacing fencing where we think it can be replaced currently. We're replacing old benches. We're looking at some of the shrubbery and plantings. So we're taking a look at things that can be done. Cost might be anywhere from several $1,000s to $5,000 a site, maybe a little more, maybe a little less, in that neighborhood. And the idea is to do that by the spring, by the end of the spring. Some of the things we just can't do in the winter, the painting and things when the temperature is below freezing. But we have started that in a number of sites. We're going to continue it. We may expand it from the sites that you've seen. I intend to, basically, because it's a good model for sprucing up parks and playgrounds, because the capital obviously takes a certain amount of time. The groundbreaking won't occur until 2016. It won't be completed generally until 2017. So we want to do a number of improvements prior to that time. It's certainly not a capital renovation. I don't want to say it is, but it's what I've just outlined. But it does make a difference. And then we'll also be having this spring the Playground Associates and doing other recreational programming, as well as increased maintenance staff that we've got from the mayor and the city council. So that will help. Maybe that's what you were getting at, was the staffing.
So it's basically a refocus of what the 5 Borough crews do, not an expansion of their role.
No, I don't. It's just they're helping out a little bit. That's the way I would characterize it.
Catherine?
Yes, first of all, I want to thank everything the Parks Department does. The parks are very treasured downtown, Community Board 1. Now that the Brooklyn Bridge project, construction project is almost completed, there were some parks, and it was like the banks, which was the skateboarding, there was basketball hoops, and it is in a forlorn area, and it actually unites CB3 and CB1. I haven't had an opportunity yet to talk to Gigi, but is there any way to get, it's also in our budget priority, and we have a resolution on it tonight, to put that in the queue, to restore it to its former glory underneath the Brooklyn Bridge?
Yeah, that would not be part of CPI necessarily. It might be. I mean, I'll take a look at how much we've invested in those sites over the last 20 years. But even if it isn't, we have the regular capital process, we have the regular maintenance process. So we shift our focus for a second on CPI, which is a terrific program. It's really going to help us. But we still have our ongoing issues. So yes, I will take a look at those, and this is true for anyone.
Great, and there was a basketball court in there, which was also really important.
And so we're still going to our elected officials, to you, and to our community boards, to say, look, we need some funding here and there. What are your priorities? You know, let's see where we can work together and come to general agreement on this. And so that's continuing as well, but this is enhanced over that regular capital process, which is what is one of the things that's so great about this. But there are other issues, and please let us know about them. Don't feel that you have to shoehorn this into CBI.
Thank you, that's a great point, and I think it's one thing that we're trying to stress all over the place too, that there's not, you know, this is not the one and only program at the Parks Department right now, though we're talking about it a lot. You know, we are also hoping to use this as a way to identify places where we need to sort of advocate for communities that don't necessarily have the same sort of advocacy that is represented in this room, for example. And so while there are some areas in Manhattan that match that kind of demographic profile of places where council and other funding sources haven't been able to prioritize parks, this is kind of one way to address that. So
You have a couple more slides to go.
we do, and I think that really a lot of this has been brought up in the questioning, but in the questions in terms of what our next steps are, our capital timeline. Again, we are initiating this 12-month design phase. We'll allow 9 months for procurement, which basically brings us to those 2016 groundbreakings and end of 2017 ribbon cuttings that we're aiming for. In the interim, we're targeting those other types of physical improvements, so you can see something immediate. And then maybe a little bit of additional plugging for the partnerships process, because I think that that's the other really key element that's going to kind of help us understand how we can fill in the gaps in terms of activating these parks and activating parks throughout the city by beginning to sort of facilitate a process where we're allowing communities to lead in terms of what types of things that they would like to see at these parks and parks nearby. So in addition to that community board meeting where we'll share the concept plan, we'll also be scheduling with the kind of a Partnerships for Parks 101 training of sorts, where we'll bring as many people as want to participate in those meetings together to meet their outreach coordinators and other folks from partnerships to sort of begin brainstorming about what other types of things should be happening in parks in the communities. And that's where we'll also build some awareness about resources that exist for those groups, capacity, seed grants, things like that. So that's a really exciting opportunity to help kind of basically fill that space in terms of programming in the immediate future. And then hopefully, the long-term goal is to create stewards that allow us to do capital work that isn't just a drop in the bucket, because we're able to extend that care and concern for parks, allowing folks to advocate for them in the future. Yeah.
Just one question on the capital process. There's been a lot of concern about this in the council, I think, here among community boards, and how long it takes to complete. And the commissioner, your commissioner, has at least, in the general sense, committed quite strongly to speeding that up. This, I presume, is a new improved timeline. It looks like counting the scoping, it's about 36 months, which is probably a slight improvement. Not sure I'd call it a dramatic improvement. And I see 12 months in there for design.
Right.
And I thought we were going to shave more off the design period. And these are not huge projects either.
And that's right, it's true. And I mean, the design period really kicks off, it's not like it's happening in the future, it kicks off with that project scoping date. So we've been essentially initiating that 12-month period since
Okay.
October.
Got it.
So we'll kind of be rolling these out on that schedule, like a 3-month schedule.
One thing that would be helpful to us would be to work with the community board so we know when their parks committee meeting is, right?
Yeah.
So we could have people go to PG or whatever. So how will that happen?
We do. We have through Capital and through our sort of intergov office, we
Okay.
have a couple of folks who are the sort of points of contact who will be scheduling.
Okay. But that would be helpful for all of us to
Yeah.
know. Okay,
Yeah,
and then we
sure.
could publicize that, and then you get away from that I didn't know problem.
Definitely.
Okay.
We'd love to do that.
Christine?
Yeah, I will follow up on this question. So all the design and all the resource you're putting on that are incremental to the existing resource which are doing design on existing projects?
Yes. Yeah. So we were able to hire additional staff to move these projects forward, as well as sort of dislodge a number of backlogged projects. So CPI is not detracting from work that was planned prior to.
And the acceleration of the process is also going to apply to the other parts? or not?
Yes.
Yeah, and I think we should also sort of like,
Okay.
we're looking broadly at CPI like a pilot program for a lot of different things. We're testing different methods for community input and other things that do impact that capital process in a sort of small initial way, and hopefully fine-tuning that in the future.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, one question. So, fields. I know this is there are no parks that have fields. All we care about Manhattan. We need more ball fields.
Yes.
And so is that none of your parks fit that, right?
I mean, it's a great point, and
That's all we care about.
That's exactly the sort of, where we're looking at very small community parks.
I
We wanted
understand
to be able to do, we do have some smaller fields.
Any field will do.
Yeah, multi-purpose fields, we're working those into
We're
some of the
looking-
designs.
Okay, we need more.
We're looking at converting asphalt to turf occasionally where the community feels it's a good idea.
Okay.
We
We're
actually discussed
desperate.
that
Or
on
could we
Monday
ask
night.
for existing projects which have been discussed?
Not part of this. You're not poor enough.
I know.
Hold on.
Just enough.
Hold on, we'll get you something else.
Get some affordable housing in there and then multi-million acres.
Thanks.
Same with boarding.
I thought we were.
Thank you.
No, you're not
Thank you so
poor
much.
enough.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yay, look who's here. Board 12 is here. This is so exciting, George Fernandez. I texted
Next
him
week.
10 times.
Next, we have a presentation, Housing Agenda for Older
Right
New Yorkers.
here. We're
The
so
presenter
excited
is
to have
Bobby Sackman, Director of Public Policy, Council of Senior Centers and Services.
That's another issue.
Morris?
I'm so excited to have you guys over here.
Hi, good morning. Is it possible for a couple of my colleagues to sit up here with me?
Absolutely.
Yeah, let me just get them. Yeah, you
Do you
can
have
come
a
up.
PowerPoint presentation or?
No,
No?
you don't,
Okay.
there's material
Can
in
you
the
just
back.
turn it up? Okay, that's fine.
We
There's some
just
seats
did
here.
parks. We
Yeah,
took
that
all
would be
your.
good, I appreciate it.
I'm teaching. Thank you for the coffee.
Yes. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
Good beginning.
Just jump in, okay. Thank you for letting us come. I'm Bobby Sackman, Director of Public Policy with the Council of Senior Centers and Services. There is material on the back table if you get a chance to pick it up. Why don't you introduce yourself?
My name is Gary Gutterman. I'm the Chief Housing Officer for Met Council on Jewish Poverty.
Hello, my name is Donald Manning. I'm the Director of Housing at JASA.
I'm Susan Albrecht with the Association of New York Catholic Homes, which is part of the Archdiocese.
So just really quickly, CSES a couple of years ago formed the Senior Housing Coalition, and in our coalition are the major nonprofit housing providers, as you can see a few agencies here. We represent over 20,000 units of senior housing across the city. It already exists, and some of it more even in the pipeline, and we hope more in the pipeline eventually. So we wanted to take the opportunity today, since community boards have a major role to play in development, to raise some points that we've been advocating for. You do have a copy of the list of our coalition, and also the executive summary of a report we released last February. Just to give you some background, but this has been, as you all know, probably all too well, a very dynamic and busy year around the housing, and also the right to counsel, which is huge for senior citizens as well. So the main piece of our advocacy is about developing housing with services, and Councilwoman Shin, of course, knows this well. We've talked a lot. In the traditional supportive housing models, in New York, we hope for to come, there's never been a category for seniors. There's been for people with certain, disabilities or substance abuse, homelessness, but not sort of like if all you do is grow old category. And you probably have some challenges, but not a senior kind of category. So one of the things we're trying to open up is that space, and also the need that when we build senior housing, that there needs to be services with it, which is basically a service coordinator. Some Section 202 buildings, they Band-Aid together, service coordinators, but again, it's not like we're the supportive housing model. It's built into the operating budget. So we're trying to foster that. And also, I'm sure you're all hearing as different discussions, debates, whatever go on around affordable housing, that I think senior housing is getting brought up more and more for no other reason other than demographics, but also when neighborhoods get more expensive, or if they gentrify, who's getting pushed out are a lot of the older folks, as you well know. We wanted to also raise, I'm just going through some things quickly, and then we can come back if we have some time. In terms of inclusionary zoning, and you wanted to, Gary, if you want to.
A major component of the mayor's housing plan is inclusionary housing. And there is really no set aside within that plan for seniors as part of the inclusionary plan. And that would be a very productive way of creating senior housing. Met Council has been doing that since 1998, and we've devoted 10 buildings in Manhattan to senior housing. And it's a wonderful thing for those people who could win a lottery and get into those buildings. It's a newly constructed building in a neighborhood with excellent services. It's a rent-stabilized apartment. And we're able to bring some services, piece together some funding to bring services to the seniors in those buildings. And when you do inclusionary housing, there is a 50% set aside for people within the community board. But we'd like it to go the other way as well, that a portion of inclusionary housing be set aside for senior citizens.
And also, CSCS has recently written a memo on New York for, I think it's a work in progress, because every time you talk to somebody else, we get new ideas and revise it. But what's central to it is also expanding the definition of homelessness. And we've also sent a memo to HPD because they just came out with what they call term sheets, which I guess are sort of their criteria for building. And within that, it says 30% set aside for homeless. And so the conversations we've been having, which again, I have a feeling you're all really familiar with, is that you've got lots of seniors that are couch surfing, which is a terrible term we've all come up with. They're doubled up, they're living in different apartments, or they're living in conditions, walk-ups they can't walk up anymore, inaccessible, or other awful conditions. We have literally almost 100,000 seniors in this city are paying over 50% of their income in rent. Even if they're on SCREE, even if they're in rent-regulated apartments, with thousands that are still on the fiscal cliff. In fact, one of our recommendations we want to advocate for, it's a whole other conversation, but is to do a rollback of SCREE. So if you get on and your income is already 50%, over 50%, or whatever it is, you're paying in rent, that it should go back to the affordable housing level, because you're never going to come off of that fiscal cliff. I mean, it's a great program, but a lot of people get in and they're already in crisis. So how do we talk about an expansion of homelessness, which could also be a good way to prevent homelessness, prevent evictions perhaps, as we move ahead, and who is considered, homeless. And I don't know if any of you have any thoughts about that. I think you probably see this. I'm sure we know that the most common call to any elected official's office every day and all day is seniors in housing. Seniors in housing. So.
I'm sorry, at the top of the meeting, I mentioned that we had enough council members to take a vote on this resolution before, so
Sure,
we're
go
gonna
ahead.
take a break, so pardon me, then you'll be able to continue.
Do we have a quorum?
We have quorum? Okay.
So we have been welcoming Councilmember Rosenthal and Councilmember Mendez, and I know that Councilmember Levine is here, and who else? And Kalos, okay.
You want to?
All right, so what we have before us, does everybody have a copy of what we're voting on? We have a resolution to dispose of city-owned property at 19 East Houston Street. It's in Community Board 2, as Toby knows. It's EDC pursuant to section 384B4 of the city charter. EDC will then sell the land to a developer for approximately $26 million and a site on East 20th Street, which will be used to store MTA vehicles that are currently stored on the East Houston site. We worked on this ULURP very hard with, and I want to thank Community Board 2, and I want to thank Councilmember Chin. The developer initially wanted a 3-story flagship retail store. You know how I feel about those things. With another 3 stories of office space. It's a very oddly shaped lot on the entrance to Soho Historic District on a busy corner. Margaret Chin and I know that if you can recognize it because there is a fruit stand there. Can't miss it. That's when you know what it is. We got the developer and DOT to agree to widen the sidewalk by 3 feet and to eliminate 1 floor of retail, so it would not be a large lit-up national flag store, national flag ship chain store. I can hardly get the words out. But I particularly want to thank Councilmember Chin, and I want to thank Toby Bergman of Community Board 2 Chair for working, and I want to know if they'd like to say a few words about this. Either one. Margaret Chin, Toby?
Well, it's really a few words. It's just a case where we met halfway and everybody was, satisfied with the outcome.
Okay. Councilmember?
Yeah, it was good. I mean, we worked with the community board, and I'm glad that the developer and MTA was able to come to an agreement and make some compromise.
Yeah, it was an MTA site to start with, just so people know, and they're very pleased with the outcome in terms of their finances. All right, so we take a vote?
Okay, so this vote is on a resolution approving a dispensation from the City of New York.
Just because our bylaws say public hearing, and we notice this is a public hearing, if anyone wants to say a few words, speak now. Okay.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Sure.
What is the market rate for the property? Is the market rate 25 million on the open market, or is there a substantial discount?
I think they got pretty much, go ahead, Margaret.
Yeah, it's,
They pretty much got good
no
price.
discount, there's no discount.
Yeah. The MTA was pleased with the amount of money they are receiving.
Okay. And so the City of New York will be receiving $25,825,000, and at what point after the closing? Because the closing is for $1.
Oh.
Either Steve can answer that.
My name is Christina DeRose. I'm with the Economic Development Corporation. So the city will sell the property to the Economic Development Corporation for $1, and then the Economic Development Corporation sells the property to the developer for the $25 million. We turn around and give the $25 million to the city. So it serves the mechanics of how that Development Corporation interacts with the city. That
Keeps lawyers busy.
that works.
And so the city will receive $25,825,000.
Yes, they receive the full proceeds, and it actually, the city budget will go to the MTA's capital budget.
And that is above market.
Yes, I think the tender appraisal was conducted, and I apologize, I don't know the number off the top of my head. But this is, EDC sells for fair market value as well, and this is above fair market value.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Johnson, go ahead. Anybody has a question? Go ahead.
No, I'm just curious. So you're saying that the $25 million plus change will go back to the Economic Development Corporation?
And then we in turn
To
give
the
it back to the
MTA.
city budget to own.
Okay, so is this money going to be earmarked for any specific projects?
It's earmarked to MTA's capital budget
No,
because
but
the
in
property.
MTA.
Oh, within the MTA capital budget, I'll turn that over to the MTA.
No, it's not earmarked for a specific project. It's actually to help us with our, we just proposed a $30 billion capital program, we have a $15 billion shortfall. So it's gonna help us, to fund our capital program.
Any possible way that money could prevent you or the MTA from raising the fare?
No,
I'm just throwing that out there.
This is the city's commitment to MTA's capital
Yeah,
budget,
it
that's
is.
why we're.
That's why they're pleased. Okay. All right.
Okay. So we'll have a roll call vote on the resolution. Manhattan Borough President Gail Brewer,
Yes?
Councilmember Chin,
Yes,
Councilmember Mendez,
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson,
Yes.
Councilmember Garanik, Councilmember Kalos,
Yes.
Councilmember Rosenthal,
Yes.
Councilmember Levine,
Yes.
Councilmember Speaker Melissa Mark-Viverito, Councilmember Dickens, Councilmember Rodriguez, Chair Toby Bergman.
Yes.
Resolution passes 8-0-4-0. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you all council members for showing up. Okay. Bobby, back to
We'll
you.
continue, Bob.
I appreciate it. Go ahead, you wanted to say something?
No, I just wanted to second what Bobby was talking about. That there's this significant and growing population of individuals, older individuals, seniors that are at serious risk of homelessness. And so that, it's our objective as advocates to really expand that definition to include those that are severely rent burdened, that are disabled, that are living in inappropriate housing.
And you want to go about the federal?
Sure. You know, JASA has several 202 properties, and 2 of them are in Manhattan. Last one we developed was in 2004 on the Lower East Side. It took 3 city lots that were donated by the city, and we built 52 apartments. In just marketing, in 2 months, I got 4,000 applications, and most of those people came from that neighborhood, in that area. I think it's time that we, again, look creatively at solutions and ways that we can work together with community boards, with nonprofits, to find ways to build housing again, either subsidized with some sort of assistance with a service coordinator. You know, a part-time service coordinator makes an amazing difference in finding ways that people can apply for food stamps, and get themselves activities and community involvement, people who would be alone by themselves without families. So we need to, again, start to be real visionary and see how we can rebuild this model for senior housing where the federal government has pulled back, whether it's...
Yeah,
Do you have a size of apartment which are appropriate and describe what is the best, you know, for example, should they be by themselves or should they be 2 up in, you know, one bedroom or 2 bedroom? Because we are doing a lot of affordable housing right now in CB4, and we have had the discussion about apartment size and very conscious about the issue of seniors, but then we find ourselves in the discussion about, do we need more families so we can, you know, help families grow the neighborhood, and what is it studios versus 2 bedroom, what is it? So it would be very helpful to us if you could articulate the characteristic of apartment that would be better for seniors.
It's a good question. HPD has their own guidelines about minimum apartment sizes.
I'm talking about you.
Oh, our
What is your
experience
recommendation?
has been, we built 7 202 buildings throughout the city, and we build all 1-bedroom apartments throughout. It's easiest that way. People like that the most. They're about 540 to 550 square feet, and it is just the right size. We found there's a building at West 61st Street.
Yay!
Yes, that is all studio apartments. And
Well, that was my question, right?
yeah.
What about the studios?
And they're all odd sizes, and you know, there's much more demand and satisfaction in a 1-bedroom apartment.
Okay, but from an income standpoint, does that work?
Yes, it could, sure.
Okay, because sometimes the studio rent, the 1-bedroom rent gets to a point where it gets expensive, at least in the
Right. I mean, the more apartments you could put in a building, the better off you are. The smaller buildings have difficulty surviving. Larger buildings.
No, I'm talking about for the seniors themselves.
Yes.
Do they have enough resource to afford the 1-bedroom, which typically is priced higher, significantly higher than the studio?
The different programs
Bring the rent down.
Okay.
have different income levels for qualification, but yes, the more subsidy is needed. In the 202, the federal government provides the subsidy for the operations, and they also provide the construction and permanent financing.
But there's not much 202 money now.
202 is really
Exactly.
dead.
So that's my question, is
Yes.
if I go around saying, hey, use 202, that's
There
not
isn't
going
any.
to
No,
fly.
No, you
it
won't
hasn't
find
been
that.
there
You
for
won't find
years,
that.
actually.
Okay, so is there any a program that we should be advocating for when we meet with the developers?
So I think, and it's sort of a good segue, because one of the points we were going to make is, and it's the same challenge everybody's facing with the pull-out of 202, but also the reduction of Section 8, and then who knows what's going to happen with this new Congress, Lord help us all. So the rental subsidy is really going to be key for seniors who, some of them are so low income they cannot afford. We're also advocating for what they call mixed income buildings. Mixed income. So you could have people none of them have a lot of money. You know,
different.
but they have
right.
different levels
We
of
do that.
income, so at least some way they're
Yes.
balancing out that the building operator can continue to, so what do they call it, 30%, 60%, and 90% AMI? What is, do you know what that is in dollars? Okay.
Well, it's
But it's,
right.
yeah.
It's based on the neighborhood.
Yeah, and so that's something we're also advocating for. The other thing to keep in mind, when I've heard many providers say that sometimes the studios are more difficult to rent up, but if we could bring services into these buildings, we really want people to stay there, maybe for the rest of their lives, if that's possible. And if they're in a tiny apartment and they even need a home care aide, or there's a family caregiver, we do have to think about space. You know, so just to keep that in mind as well. That's all.
Margaret, anything you want to add about?
Well, I guess some of the discussion we have is that now, you know, with all the affordable housing that are, you know, being built, we have, I mean, senior can look at what income that they could fit in. I mean, it doesn't have to be a building just for seniors, so that we have to get the information out there that whatever affordable housing that's being built,
right,
they need to apply and
Yes.
see if they meet that income level. And if there are opportunities where there is certain development happening where we can get senior building, like in the Lower East Side with Spur, you know, there is a building, 100-unit designated for seniors.
Right.
But I think in general, seniors should apply for any affordable apartment that's being built.
They apply. They still need a lot more though.
Right, we just,
They need a lot more.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to understand the scope of the problem. You're saying there's 100,000 seniors at risk?
no, what I said was that that's the number from the housing vacancy report that are paying over 50% of their income in rent. There could be other seniors at risk. I wasn't putting an exact, you know, number citywide, but it gives you an idea of the scope of.
Right. And so the idea is that, because my thought is that you've got several approaches to this problem. One is to build housing, the other is to this more about either mixed income or trying to provide units. Seems to me there's a problem of scale of volume here. There's just simply not enough housing you can build
Yes.
and come up with the money for it. So the creative ways are going to have to be, for me, ideal if you could incent builders to build market rate, but give subsidies or something, whatever, help seniors live in those places. That would be probably the best way to get enough units out there. Because this, you know, this problem you put up here in terms of you had 4,000 seniors apply for 52 spots, 1.3%.
That's, and that's very common.
I know, it's
Yeah.
terrible.
I think it's very common.
Yeah, I mean,
Very
but I mean, it seems to me you need a much larger kind of thinking to deal with this problem. Because seniors are in a bad way right now, they're getting killed. This is really a problem that's come out of our financial economy, and because rates are so low, they don't get anything back on any money they may have in the bank. So
Right.
how do they live on fixed incomes? You know,
And
it
they're getting
becomes
like a
more-
1%,
Right,
1.5%
anyway, I won't go
increase
into
in
all that, but
Social
that,
Security.
I just was trying to understand, you know, more of the scope of the problem, and it's
The other
significant.
thing I want to mention, which actually might someday come before community boards, is CSDS is in the midst of doing a parking lot survey of Section 202 buildings across the city. By mid-January, we'll have some preliminary findings, and then hopefully by February 5th will be completed. And the idea behind this, and we've talked to people at the Department of City Planning, HPD, they're all waiting for this study. And so we're asking 202 providers, who, because the parking lot's been a requirement, to see is there a way that either more units could be built or some other community, you know, maybe there's something else they could put in that space that would be good, you know, for the seniors. But of course, the priority would be, is there space to build more units of housing? So we will come back with that.
Yeah, I just want to basically just talk about what you just said, Nick. I just think that's a really good idea, I mean, really a good idea, if we start looking at developers who are getting tax exemptions, and maybe this can be something for our borough president to look at and the council members to put into all of their plans, senior housing and all these developments, because you're not gonna get many developers or individuals with land to give up for seniors. You know, unfortunately, it's not gonna work. Everyone is looking at making money. But if there could be something in any of our laws that say for seniors developers to maybe 2 or 3 apartments for seniors, and we have to just make sure those seniors know about this and get those apartments. It's something worth thinking about.
Yes, absolutely right, which is, the inclusionary housing program is trying to do that, and that's what we'd like to do, is get a set aside for seniors as part of that other set aside.
What we can do is get you some ideas for the board, some resolutions, and then you can decide if you want to do them or not, in terms of the inclusionary.
And could we get an idea of the AMI you think is appropriate for senior, or it's all over the place?
It's all over the place depending on the program, that the existing programs at HDC and HPD. Some of the inclusionary housing is at 80% and 60% of AMI, and that's more of a moderate or middle income senior housing level. And then there's the tax credits, which is 50% or lower.
But I'm asking, in your experience, of your knowledge of the seniors which are in need, what is
The lower the
revenue
income,
level?
the lower the income that the program targets, the more need there is. There are people who really need who only have Social Security. Their income is $8,000. We're opening applications, like Donald just said. It's incredible. And as you mentioned, people are in need right away. When they call us, and they call all day long, they have to be out of their apartment in a month, and the waiting list is 2 years long. So how do you help people in immediate need is the toughest challenge. And disseminating information, as Councilmember Chin said, about where do they apply, not just for senior housing, all other housing, that is key. And there are websites out there, and some seniors don't have access to the computer, but getting the word out by computer is also important for all the affordable housing.
Yeah, the key really is this income averaging for the tax credit projects, because a lot of the seniors we have are $7,000 and a couple $15,000. They're not going to qualify for those tax credit buildings. They're just too low income. So there has to be this income averaging where where they are getting tax abatements and real estate tax abatements. They've got to push that band lower to allow seniors to get that one-bedroom apartment or studios. I mean, frankly, the demand for us is so high, they'll take studios if we can get them into. My waiting lists are 10 to 15 years long now. It got to the point where I had to close them because I felt bad telling people, I'm sending you an application, but you're going to have to wait 15 years. We need senior
There's some
housing.
discussion, although it's always frightening to mention it, if and when there's some discussion on building on NYCHA, instead of doing the Bloomberg high-income plan, it could be for senior housing. So again, this is one possibility that people are talking about, but not the top-down, which is what we experienced last time.
Right, and that's targeting, I think, the seniors that are in large apartments that they would
It
like
could be
to-
for anybody. I mean, there's just so many of them. It's
Okay.
mind-blowing, so.
It is mind-blowing, it's true. All right.
Other questions, comments? All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're gonna go quickly.
Next, we have the Borough President's
I'll be
report.
very quick, we'd rather hear from you, and I know time is of the essence, so, I know that thanks to Alden Bonilla, there's a year in review report on the back table, I don't know if everybody got it. There is a couple of things that we've been working on, the open data, and all the technology work, I think you've been experiencing some of that regarding support in your community boards and in the offices in terms of the CUNY fellow interns. But just last night I was at Harlem Silicon and with the new data manager for the city of New York, he's fabulous, and I think there are job possibilities coming out of open data and a lot of excitement, trying to figure out ways we can use it. Second, on terms of the work that Alden is doing in the SWAB, which is the Solid Waste Advisory Board, there is a real push on organics and trying to figure out the recycling. And I think we're really making sure that Manhattan follows that in the schools, despite the fact that one of the companies has closed down because there's a lot of contamination in the organics. We're still pushing that really strongly. And then, of course, just in terms of, we're all working on this issue of affordable housing and trying to figure it out. I want to thank people who've been working with us on planning for pre-ULURP, so to speak. Some of us, like Margaret Chin and I, are involved with many battles, but one in particular. But I know with Lenox Terrace and so on, lots of places, and there are other places where you'd like to work, where you know a huge development is coming up, where we could sit down and have agencies, developer, community, business people help you with the planning. We would be glad to do that. So that's just a quick summary of many, many things that we've been working on. I want to thank all of you, and particularly the staff of the Borough President. You want to add anything?
And also, many of you probably have been receiving questions on community boards in terms of the appointment process and applications. They're currently up on the Borough President's website. So there's two options. You can either download the paper version and mail it in, as has been done in the past, or for the first time, you're able to now apply online. And you could just fill out the application online, submit, and get a receipt of your application. So we hope that'll streamline the process. Councilman Burger?
Thank you. Actually, I have a question for the Borough President about the organics recycling. Do you, I would love some guidance from anyone, but I would love some guidance about what to say to constituents. I mean, on the Upper West Side, the last Green Market, we collected nearly 3 tons of organics, and at a time when, you know, we're finally engaging people on this, the press around the closing of that
Peninsula.
Oh my goodness, it had a real chilling effect. And any thoughts? Is anyone working on anything that we could talk about, or are you convening a group? I'd love to participate.
I think we should. I mean, I did talk to the commissioner about it immediately to say, are we still going forward? Because this has created a dampening effect.
Yeah.
And why my understanding, although, you know, I don't have any proof of this, is that the actual, in the schools, the kitchen staff is doing great. But somehow when it gets downstairs, it's being contaminated. So a lot of the peninsula was organics. I don't think it was coming from Green Market. Unfortunately, I was coming from city institutions, I'm afraid. And so it was contaminated, and they couldn't recycle, and so on and so forth. So I think we need to, the issue is to get the schools doing it correctly. We've had 2 meetings with unions, with the Department of Education and Department of Sanitation, because I wanted the union members to see that their work was valued, and that they would in fact feel positive about their work. I do think there's a financial issue here. They want more money, understandably, for doing the extra work. So that's part of the issue. Once we have the schools worked out, then any building along the way can be part of the same truck. So that's where we're stuck. So to be honest with you, I'm going to focus on the schools, and let's do that together.
Okay.
And then there are 100 schools in Manhattan that are supposedly recycling. We need to make them do it correctly, because that's what screwed up that company. So that's what it, but it's not the Green Market, it's the schools, unfortunately.
And some of that too, I know when I visited school recycling, I don't know if anyone else has experienced this, the DOE is packaging food differently with more packaging, so it makes it harder for a kid to recycle. So like they get a waffle in its own individual plastic bag, and then they didn't want to eat the waffle, so now they sort of, you know.
What am I supposed to do now?
Does this go in garbage?
Or in plastic?
You know, and the answer is you have to open it up.
I know.
Take the waffle out, put it in plastic. So it's like, it's a.
So I think we should have more discussion about the schools, to answer your question. That's where the rub is.
Sandra?
No, I was just gonna ask, I mean, I know that the schools were part of it, since they were also piloting residential use
Yes.
of the organics recycling in Brooklyn and elsewhere, could that also have contaminated it?
I don't know, it's a good question. I mean, I must admit, the schools were a big problem. I imagine that is definitely possible. I don't know exactly where Peninsula was taking from in addition to the schools. We can find out. We'll get more information and send it out to people.
Because I would imagine that at home, it's much more difficult than for people who are just getting used to it. I know it was kind of a pilot program, but you know, it definitely also in the schools would be for little kids.
I mean, the school issue was, once you're there, then the truck can do the residentials in Manhattan, because the buildings are so tall. Right. So they had started in other boroughs because they didn't have the volume.
Right.
Very frustrating.
Comments, questions? Joe Garber has an announcement.
Just a quick FYI, our Borough of Manhattan Cultural Tourism Grant process is underway. For those who are not familiar with the process, it's a grant program we partner with NYC and Company on. It's to help promote tourism in currently under-trafficked areas in the borough. They're small grants, roughly $3,500 to about $5,000. So if you have cultural groups in your community boards that are looking to do promotion, it's to help them promote their programs and get folks into their spaces. So if you have folks in your community boards that are doing programs that are not getting the tourist traffic they're looking for, they should go on our website. The application's on the website, apply for a grant, and we can help give them, you know, folks that are selected will get a little money to help them advertise.
Do you have a flyer on it?
It's on our website. I
So
can
we
send
can
you the link.
circulate
That
it
would be
to the-
great if you could just email.
Sure,
it out.
sure, definitely.
You
We
don't
can,
want to just circulate.
we can do that.
What,
Okay.
just summary of what it's about?
Yeah, we had an email blast we sent out to culturals. We'll send you the same email blast so you have the information, and it has a link to the application.
Great, thank you.
Okay, we'll do that.
Thank you. So for the first community board chair report out will be from Nick Viest. And many of you know that today this is his last borough board as chair of community board 8. So we'll have him
Great,
present
yeah,
first.
thank you, and the reason that they're allowing me to go first, I actually have a business conference call at 10:30 that I have to be on, so I'll be brief. First of all, we had a discussion on a marine transfer issue. This is we were asked by Asphalt Green to ask the city to halt construction for the time being until they can sort out what entrance ramp makes sense. The problem is there's no really good alternative, but there may be the lesser of evils in this. We're not taking a position at this point as what the entrance should be, whether it should be 91st, 92nd. But there are problems currently, we think, with the 91st Street entrance as it bisects the playing field with the kids and the building. The entrance is right on York Avenue, and trucks would have to take a right or a left turn going into it. So you can see the problems that would come up with that. So we essentially voted last night to ask the city to halt that and to review all the options, the safest option really, because we think this project, we oppose it, but we're also saying to the city, look, you're going forward. Safety has to be paramount because of the sensitivities. So we voted on that last night. Other than that, two other things. We gave out our brevity award to the elected official representative, which I did actually. In previous years, the borough president has won this. Jesus didn't get it this year because he's normally he's very concise, but he's just started with us. So if the next chairman has this award, then he certainly has the opportunity. He does a great job for us. Actually, the representative from Liz Kruger's office got it. Anyway, I'll just briefly say I'm very appreciative of the support. The brevity. It's the brevity award. It's when they present their elected official stuff. And it's not simply just being short. It's doing it in a way that fairly represents them concisely and well done. So it's subjective. I give it out.
Great idea.
Yeah. So anyway.
Right, I'm starting to.
So yeah, and I forgot to bring the cupcakes because you get cupcakes with that. So I'm bringing that to their office. So I do want to thank the borough president's office for all the support that we've gotten, that our board has gotten. Really, you guys have done a fantastic job supporting us. I have to say that. We've had a number of different issues that have come up. The responses from this office have been excellent. So I want to thank everybody involved who's helped us there. And I want to thank everyone here for the excellent work that you all do. And it's been a privilege to be part of this. So thank you very much.
I know council member reps are here, but if council members wanted to make any announcements or updates before they leave or anything?
Oh, I would like to make an announcement.
Yes.
Yesterday, we passed the legislation to monitor all those private social adult daycare that's been popping up all over the city. So starting next year, they would have to register with the Department of Aging. And there's going to be an ombudsman person at the Department of Aging to take complaint and do investigation, and there'll be civil penalties for violation of not registering or not following basic standards that was set by the state. So
Great.
yeah, right?
Great.
We've
Thank
been working on this for a couple of years.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
The state still haven't done anything, so in absence of state legislation, the city steps in.
Congratulations.
Councilmember members?
I am looking to, in the new year, very shortly thereafter, having a hearing on my after-hours variance bill that I had introduced last session with the borough president. We've tweaked it a little bit, and so I'm hoping that after the hearing we can actually make it law. I'm also very excited about the Cuban political prisoners being released. I was planning a trip of an LGBT delegation, so maybe this makes it all that much easier when we finally get our delegation together.
Great.
Thank you. And the Borough Board passed a resolution in favor of Intro 17, right? The after-hours variance bill. So we are on record passing it.
Presentation, I don't
And we passed it in, it says it here
April.
in April.
In April,
The presentation was
okay.
in March and we passed it in April. So you have that support as well. Councilmember Rosenthal?
Helen, do you want to make a report of any kind?
Sorry, small delegation issue. Happy holidays.
Well, while you think, let me just
Sorry,
add
go.
in that the city council is gonna be having a series of hearings all related to changing and having a lot of impact on police-community relations. We have a chokehold legislation that's in, making it illegal. We are also talking about having the CCRB come to our community so that people do not have to go to the Lower Manhattan office, that they could have a local place at a certain time of the month to come and make complaints, looking at, the community precinct councils and how they're functioning. There's like a packet of things that we're gonna be having hearings in all the different committees. I don't remember all the topics, but those are some of the big ones.
You have a question?
I have a question, yes. We in CB4, we have a situation where we have 4 precincts covering our neighborhood. And it is really a tremendous hardship for the residents to first figure where to call, and second, to go to all the meetings. And so the co-termination of is a major issue that has not been resolved, first of all. And second, the second problem we have is the inclusion of traffic police into those meetings and the community, because every time we complain about something like that, they say, oh, it's somebody else. So we don't have a community relation interfacing to the traffic police. And that's very frustrating. So those 2 issues make that our relationship with the police, which is very good otherwise, right, is just extremely complicated and very inefficient.
Well, so it's the first time I don't have those.
Yeah, we can work on that,
Police.
Christine. I got it.
I have other problems.
I got it.
Okay. I cover Union Square Park.
Right.
Where the police stage all their cars prior to
Oh, yeah,
protests
so it's
along
Times Square.
2nd, 3rd, 4th
Right.
Avenue. So I get a whole bunch of other
Right.
complaints from residents.
So Gail, that's.
We'll work on that.
Right.
I can handle that.
Actually, can
Yes.
I ask 2 things? One is that City Bike might be going north. So I would appreciate, my office would appreciate any advice from the people whose districts it's already in. I'm already, just in the very notion of City Bike coming north, I'm already getting people writing me and saying, yeah, this is great, don't do it in front of my property,
I'm going west to New Jersey. And City Bike is going west into New Jersey.
Really?
Yes.
Well, let's talk about Manhattan. Go
Yes,
ahead.
right, that's going far.
So I would appreciate if anyone has advice about a process that works for them. We'll obviously go through the community board process. We're keeping a list right now. Some of the things we're trying to weigh it with, I'm looking for ideas for how to give it a framework. If we're pulling out 311 complaints about where traffic is most congested and trying to use that as a tool, as an argument to say, why put it where traffic is most congested? But if anyone else has any other guideposts that they've used or. Oh, great, thank you.
Okay.
Just for Councilmember Mendez.
Okay.
You mentioned the legislation about chokehold making it illegal, but, and correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't the chokehold banned a long time ago?
So there's a difference. City agencies pass rules. And so the police department banned the chokeholds, so it's a rule. When we pass legislation, it becomes law, and it overrides any rules. And it could codify the rules or change the rules.
and it has more weight, and then the agency has to pay attention to what the legislation is. So we're gonna get opposition from the police. They like saying things are banned and then they do them anyway.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to understand. If they banned it but they didn't enforce what they banned, now you have to pass legislation to force them.
Right, that's right.
I got it. Thank you so much.
Corey Johnson?
Are we giving just updates?
Yes, you are.
Oh, okay. Sorry I was late. It's good to see everyone. Happy holidays. Craziness out in the hallway. I'm a little thrown off.
I got that too.
Yeah,
Talk about the
I'm
legislation.
a little off kilter.
Talk about the legislation.
Yes, no, there's a bunch of good
Yeah.
legislation. So it's been an incredible year, and I'm really grateful to work with the amazing people. All of you are on the table, especially the borough president, and bringing us all together. But I chair the health committee, and last week we passed 2 bills that allow transgender New Yorkers to change their birth certificates to accurately reflect their gender, which is a really big deal, and I've been working on it since February with the de Blasio administration and the health commissioner, and so we're very excited. And then yesterday we passed 4 bills to protect pets, cats and dogs and bunnies in New York City. And there are 4, sort of a suite of bills, a package of bills. But one of them basically bans pet shops in New York City from buying from puppy mills. So it's been a busy year, a good year. Our delegation of members is really fantastic. We have the best delegation. And Gail used to be the head of the delegation, and to work with Helen. And yes, God bless Gail for doing that.
Congratulations.
So it's been a good year. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Corey's really been on a roll.
Community Board 1?
Oh, great. Happy holidays, everyone. You think we might get a break in December, but we haven't since the last meeting. First of all, I want to thank the Borough President in your office for giving us 2 of the CUNY interns to be working with our planning department, and they're already hard at work with our planning department. Number 2, as you all know, because the Borough President's office, the Borough President, have been very involved with the Howard Hughes development at the South Street Seaport. We had the first of 2 special landmark committee meetings at St. Paul's Church here on Broadway. It was completely full. It was over 350 people. The space was at capacity. It was a presentation by Howard Hughes for a certificate of appropriateness for 10 different items. And it was a meeting from 6 to 9 p.m. The presentation lasted almost an hour. The community board members spoke and asked Q&A of Howard Hughes for about 30 minutes, and basically half of the meeting was given over to the public for the public comment. And draft resolution will be worked on over the holidays, and we're having the second of 2 special landmark meetings on Monday, January 5th. And it's going to be led by the Landmarks Committee with the relevant committees to be included, and it'll go for a full board vote. And we're trying to find a bigger space in January to hold that meeting because the current location just wasn't big enough, and that meeting will be on Monday, January 25th. The third item, I'm sure everyone's been, following what happened yesterday. Community Board is thrilled that fracking is banned in New York State. We want to thank the governor and everybody else who's been working on that long-year battle. And also there was a meeting a couple days ago. Speaker Silver held the World Trade Center's security plan meeting, and he's calling for air monitors to measure the tour bus pollution around the 9/11 memorial. And we're also very concerned about where the buses are parking and picking off, because Trinity turning off onto Liberty Street's very narrow, and it's supposed to be 2 lanes, and they want to drop off and pick up buses. And this is something that the community's been concerned about for a very long time. And I also want to thank you for the trainings I went to.
Well, thank you very much.
It was helpful. And on the diverse, inclusive, transparent leadership and the equal employment opportunity diversity training, so I encourage other board members to go if you get a chance. more to talk about, but I wanna make sure everybody gets it.
Thank you very much, Catherine.
Thank you.
Community Board 3, Gigi?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Community Board 2. Toby.
Again, I'm Toby Bergman. I'm happy to meet everybody. I have to start with an apology I feel terrible about, which is that I didn't realize these meetings go on so long. I have a 10:30 appointment, so I'm not going to hear all the reports now. Two brief things I want to talk about, and they're big things, but I want to talk about them briefly. In Community Board 2, we have a situation with kind of two major neighborhood transformations happening, and one is one that we feel very positive about, the other is one that we're battling. And the one we feel positive about is what's happening on the waterfront. We have Whitney Museum opening up soon. We have a pretty fabulous project that we expect to happen soon at Pier 55, which is a performance venue on a newly built pier. It's actually now going to be kind of an island pier, largely privately funded by Barry Diller, and then kind of moving towards hopefully a final solution for Pier 40 in connection with the air rights transfer to the St. John's building. So all of those things are going to be really, I think, really important for the maturity of all the changes that have happened on the waterfront. We've had a lot of problems, for example, with the meat market, and now we see perhaps some of that with the creation of a bid there, and with some of the changes of the kinds of businesses that are coming in. We're hoping that that nightlife situation, which has been really hell for the neighbors of that area, is going to work. On the other hand, in Soho, we've had really what can be called a blitz of large-scale retail coming in. And I'm sure everybody knows Broadway. You just can't walk down the streets anymore. It's it's just out of control. And now we have more and more large-scale retail coming in, which ostensibly is not legal under zoning. It requires a special permit in the M15 areas, but the problem is that there's some loopholes, and some of them are kind of almost ridiculous loopholes. It seems like Nike is creating a 5-story huge retail outlet on Spring and Broadway, which is one of the busiest areas of Broadway. The reason they are possibly able to do this is because there's a loophole for athletic equipment stores. Well, we don't really think of Nike as athletic equipment. Another one that might come in is Google, on actually a narrow Soho Street, now on Broadway, as a business equipment store. So I guess they mean business equipment.
They're just a software.
But we don't really know what it is, but these are, the Soho as a very special mixed-use neighborhood is really under threat. And we've been working with Councilmember Chen and Gail Brewer really effectively with the staff. And one big victory in that regard was the scaling back of the project at 19 Housing Street. So we're hoping for more of the same.
One quick question on Pier 40 and the ball fields. Can you give us a timeline of how you see that going?
I don't. I think we're kind of hearing some rumors that maybe in the next couple of months there's going to be the beginnings of the Euler project, but we don't really have the details of that.
So do you see all the ball fields going off online at the same time, or how?
We're kind of a long ways away from there. The first thing that has to happen is the transfer air rights, the funding for Pier 40 in terms of the infrastructure of Pier 40 before we even begin planning of what the future of Pier 40 is. So I'd say several years at least before any
Long
redesign.
time, Catherine.
We're talking probably 5 years before there's any major redesign of Pier 40.
Thank you for that update, Toby. Community Board 3, Gigi?
Yes, so just quickly, it'd be great if we could get a presentation on the rollout of the municipal IDs.
Okay.
And kind of what that's going to look like and what it means and how the community boards could be helpful.
The district managers will get one tomorrow.
Okay.
So then we'll arrange one for the borough board as well.
Okay, great. So I guess the theme that's for running through my update is just sort of trying to figure out where the community board can have the most impact and voice on a couple of things. One is that we are, I guess, I'll use fighting in air quotes, and Eva Moskowitz Charter School to come into CB3. It was originally planned for another CEC, but they, I guess, changed their mind to be in the Lower East Side. And for a while, it seemed like they were gonna be able to slip by without doing a public hearing and kind of overall community review. And the elected officials stepped in, and now there is gonna be one in January.
No, there's no community review.
Not community review, I'm sorry, there's
It's just a
actually gonna be
public
a
session.
meeting, a public session,
Public hearing.
a public hearing, and right, and not, yeah, presentation, I guess, I'm sorry.
Just so you know, what we had in District 3 was by the guy who runs a Xerox machine at the Department of Education.
Oh, okay. So,
I
you know,
forgot he was that qualified.
right, so I think like, we have a member of the CEC that sits on our Education Human Services Committee, but, and we passed a resolution, and I don't know if there's really any more that the community board can do, but that is something we'd be interested in, kind of lessons learned from other boards. We have 2 NYCHA units that are part of this sort of Section 8 within NYCHA, now going into this potential 30-year ability to be privatized process, which, you know, it is what it is, but it would be good to kind of get more information and clarity around that, as well as information and clarity around knowing that we have 2 parcels on CB3, even though we don't know which ones, that are part of the new mayor's RFP for like this infill to develop affordable housing. And it's particularly troublesome because the northern part of CB3 has the most community gardens of any neighborhood in the city, in the entire city. In the entire city, and all of those are not going to be protected as of January 1st. So the community garden advocates are very anxious about whether or not you know, that their garden might be one of those parcels.
My office was told that community gardens, once the lease expires, will be looked at. So that means all,
January 1st.
and it expires January 1st, which means all my community gardens are gonna be up for grabs by
So we
developers.
need to have a meeting, I know you've done it already, but we need more
And I've been
discussion.
trying to establish a community garden district or historic garden district.
Yep.
I have like 60-something community gardens in my part of Community Board 3 alone.
Can I just say something about the community gardens? Gigi Lee and I were on the New York Rising for Lower Manhattan, and one of the projects that was funded was resiliency, particularly in the community gardens on the Lower East Side. So I don't know how that would impact that, but it would impact it because my favorite statistic is that there's 95% is impermeable on the Lower East Side. So when there are these extreme weather events, it's a huge issue.
Okay, good point.
And then just the last quick update is that we're moving ahead with the CB6, CB3 Joint Waterfront Task Force, which is going to meet quarterly to work with the Mayor's Office of Recovery and Resiliency, Parks Planning, on the $335 million award by HUD for Rebuild by Design. So we're very excited to have, you know, 2 boards together and a great group of community stakeholders to start that engagement.
And some
process.
money, which is nice.
And some money, yes.
Very
Not all, it's only phase
I
1,
know,
but
I know, but
it's,
it's a
we'll
big-
take it.
I would like, Community Board 1 would love to be able to join there, but no money has been allocated to Community Board 1. I just want to state for the record, we had 2 people drown, and there was over 7 feet of water in the South Street Seaport. So we would love to be part of that waterfront.
Okay.
Thank you, Jean. Community Ward 4, Christine?
Yes. So first I want to thank the board president for a fantastic win. We got the phone booth contract signed, and part of that, the board president, staff, James Carras, and everyone has negotiated that community boards will, and the board president will have a say in the location of the phone booth or the application, which the appliance, which are called links. And also, as far as relocation, there will be an opportunity to look at relocating some of them if there are too much concentration, and that was a fantastic outcome that we've been working on for
There's
so
one
long.
really funny part in Board 7, which is that there are 3
Oh, yes.
urine-filled, fabulous, wonderful phone booths from the old days, right?
That would be concerned.
And they have graffiti, and we love them. And they stay.
Right.
As part of this contract. I think that's hysterical.
So that's hysterical. So we get to move them, conserve them, whatever. Anyway,
They
this
stay.
is very, very exciting for CB4 where
That was
we
my
have
little contribution.
a major issue. I don't know whether you saw, DOT has published a report on the most dangerous intersection for pedestrians, the top 20. And in the top 20, the most dangerous, and that covers 4 years, 57 and 8 is identified as the most dangerous, and 3 of them are on 57th Street. So we're going to ask, and by the way, the correction they have made there are really completely cosmetic and inadequate. So we have already raised that issue. We're going to send an email, but we think that maybe since the Vision Zero is looking at corridors, maybe the whole corridor of 57th Street could be something we collectively ask for, because we have so many construction on the west side and it's more dangerous. And the third item is that we have a large homeless shelter, which is more than 400 beds, which was located 3-4 years ago against our will on 25th Street, on a residential street. And now the problem has become enormous, with over 2,000 people coming in and out of that shelter every day. And the residents are at their wits' end with, drugs, assaults, etc. And we're trying to work with DHS and the police, but we may need your help on resolving what to do about this shelter called BRC. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. CB5, CB6.
Just a quick note on the shelter. I mean, the shelter that we have on East 30th Street, East 20th, East 30th Street, I mean, it's been oversubscribed for years, and it's really in an unsafe condition for the residents of the shelter. And so I think that is something that we should be talking again about. It really is not healthy for the community as well as for the actual inhabitants of the shelter. So I just wanted to real quickly mention, I'm sure there's been lots of press about it that you might have seen, but the multi-board task force put a very comprehensive set of resolutions around One Vanderbilt and the Vanderbilt corridor and the East Midtown rezoning, and they passed boards 5 and 6, since board 5 is not here, I'll mention that, pretty much unanimously. I think there were a couple of abstentions for cause, but pretty much unanimously, and that they're coming now to the Borough President's office and the Borough Board. So I guess that's something we'll be looking forward to next month. So hopefully we can
Yes.
work together a little bit on that.
Absolutely.
And I wanted to thank Councilmember Mendez, the Borough President, Councilmember Garodnick, on the East 25th Street sanitation garage. Now, after, so if you recall, last meeting I actually mentioned we came together as a board and engaged BFJ Planning to come up with alternative uses for the site, because we really didn't think that the initial proposal from sanitation was really good for the community. And so we put together a steering committee, and we have some alternatives that we're going to be voting on at our next meeting. But EDC has now stepped in, so EDC will be the lead agency on the project, and they're going to be reaching out to our stakeholder group and probably trying to expand it to Board 3 and Board 8, because they might be affected directly by the sanitation garage. So I'm actually quite happy that this is going in the right direction. There's going to be more public engagement and input into the entire process. And I just want to mention that the Deputy Commissioner earlier confirmed that the gates have come down, and Astor Levy, the expanded park space, is now open to the public. So actually, I haven't seen it myself in the last few days. So hopefully we'll have a ribbon cutting officially in the next couple of weeks, and invite everyone down to come see our little new addition. Again, I just want to mention, I think there's 1 acre for every 1,200 people across Manhattan. CD6 actually has 1 acre for every 5,237 people. So we have very little public space, so every little bit really does count. So anyway, so yeah.
We're not giving
Thank you.
CB7, Elizabeth Caputo was here, but she had to leave early. CB9, CB10.
CB10. Real quick, I just spoke to Councilman Levine about the 125th Street and SBS buses. You know, Community Board 10 has not supported that project because we didn't feel there was a comprehensive plan made. And I shared with him this morning just what I went through on the east side and with those SBS buses. The lanes are totally empty and all the cars can't get on 125th Street because of the one lane and it's so congested. So that's something we really need to look at, and DOT needs to really come up with a real plan on how to divert those cars from going to the east side, the west side, all on 125th Street and, you know, the SBS buses. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Community Board 10 has basically created the LGBT task force to talk about the services in our community and other communities, where to make sure individuals of that sector have a place to go and know what kind of resources are out there. And it's also a learning experience for us, so we are just kind of formulating this and looking at the goals and objectives for this particular committee, but we're really proud of creating this committee. The Clara Mother Hill Bus Depot was open about 2 weeks ago, and it's the first green bus depot in New York City. And it's a beautiful development. So right now, I'm not sure if they still have tours, but it's a really beautiful facility. So if you're ever up there,
How can we take a tour?
137.
We can contact you?
Well, let me see if they're still doing tours.
They're doing tours, they're doing tours.
What makes it green and
On top, they have the roof and everything like that with the water, you know, and again, this is
mind-blowing.
new for me because this is the first time I've actually seen something in action. But it's really a very lovely bus depot.
So will they also require that the buses that are parked in this green
Don't
depot
idle.
are green as well?
Everything,
Well, everything.
everything is
yes,
green. Buses are
everything is
green, roof is green, this,
Everything,
that's cool.
yeah.
So these are MTA buses?
Yes, this is the bus depot where the buses stop
How on
on 147 and Adam Clayton.
We'll make sure that there are tours.
A tour.
Right.
Right.
exciting.
Right.
Work on that.
Because I have a bus depot. and
So it's really great. Talking about all the parks and everything like that, the Department of Parks removed some benches from one of our squares, a Philip Randolph Square, because a lot of homeless people were going out there. A lot of residents were not happy because they could not sit in this square because of all the homelessness. So we have to be very careful on that. We're looking at all the various services, and clearly there must be a lot of homeless shelters, and people actually have to leave during the day, I understand. And so they have to go somewhere, and so they're sitting around, and they want to be outside. So we have to look at this, look at the services that are being provided by these homeless shelters, and make sure, you know, individuals who are homeless really have productive things. I mean, there could be jobs, trainings, or something. But right now, they're just coming out in the street and they're sitting, and residents are getting very upset. But we have to be very careful because it's not just for the, you know, residents who are living nicely. It's for everyone in our community. So this is a concern we have. And if you ever went past the Harlem State Office Building, which is a beautiful building and beautiful grounds, you can't get anywhere near any of those benches because of all the homeless people who are there all day long, and then a lot of them, it's a safe haven. They actually sleep on these benches also. So it's almost off limits for everyone else. So it's something we really need to look at, and how other communities are dealing with this also, you know. So that's one thing. Other than that, there's just a lot of little things, and this was a very good meeting. A lot of things we touched on was really, really good. I need to know more about the community garden in terms of this thing expiring, because we have so many community gardens in our community. And I also want to thank the Borough President's Office for those trainings. And I did go to the other night, and it was really very helpful. And I hope we can get the PowerPoint. We did have a meeting last night. We had our EC meeting, and I used a couple of her tactics. So I was really on my game based on that training. So
We should have the PowerPoint up on our website. So
great.
It was a pilot project, the only of its kind. It was
yes.
a pilot.
It
so
was on Tuesday. Tuesday night.
The Tuesday night one.
Yeah, really good. So I
Thank you.
need to make sure I'm at every
Thank
one.
you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Community Board 11, Community Board 12.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Happy holidays to everyone. Thank you to the Borough President's Office for a wonderful year of support. We appreciate it. I'm happy to report that over the course of several weeks, myself, the district manager, and the chairpersons of our committees, or relevant committees, have met with SLA, DCA, HPD, and the New York City Chamber of Commerce, where we're discussing still the issue of MWB East over the GWB project. As you know, that's a big project, and there's a lot of things going on just recently they held a union job fair, and at the 11th hour it was changed to the GWBs.
Oh.
And the community was in uproar about that. So I'm talking to Councilmember Rodriguez to find out what happened at the 11th hour. When we're trying to get our MWBs or our union workers on this project, they shift and change to a different address. So that's a big concern for us. I'm also happy to announce that we've been present at the City Council hearings. My chairperson for Housing and Human Services was present at the Mayor's Oversight hearing on affordable housing, but we still raise the question around his 10-year plan. Where is our community district at in affordable housing development? We see it popping all throughout the city. 10-year plan sounds good, but there's no specifics in where we are at in this 10-year plan. Also, we were present at the Wi-Fi meeting. Our chairperson for housing, he's into computers, so I sent him down there. And he gave testimony in regards to this Wi-Fi distribution with the phone booths. We had concerns about ADA compliance. We had concerns about the speed, who's gonna get more of the speed. We also had concerns about the lengthiness of the contract. And I also raised concerns about that we have to be careful with these contracts, because I feel like we're giving away our city to corporate America. The people that have that contract are gonna make more than $20 million. Way more than $20 million on advertisement alone. And because then they're gonna get other consumers and all of that. Why are we giving up contracts for $20 million when we can sell it for $100 million? Easy, because they're gonna make at least $200 million off of it. So I feel like we have to be careful that we don't sell our city to corporate America. We have to be very careful, and I just want to highlight that. Also, to piggyback on the municipal IDs, our community district encompasses of 73% of Hispanics, which that makes a large population of immigrant residents. So we're very much interested to want to coordinate either with the Borough President's Office or someone who can guide us more about explaining or giving education to our residents there about these municipal IDs and how they can access them and use them. We held as well, we passed a resolution on the MiFi. Google gave a grant to the New York City Public Libraries for these individual MiFi unit boxes. And we recognize that the Bronx already has 3,000 units secured. The other boroughs, there was only 10,000. And we're trying to understand the control over the distribution of those units for individuals who need them, and specifically in our district. We like to get our fair share of that and want to understand better about that. Also, we held a public safety forum for the calendar year of 2014 to address all of the violent activity that took place. It was a positive meeting, and we're going to be proceeding with the precincts, the DA's office, to talk about those issues, as well the pill mill on
Closed it,
it's 100 I forget the address.
right near the mansion.
Right near the mansion was
They
shut
closed it.
down, so that's a big up. Thank you to the U.S. Attorney. We appreciate that, and all of the law enforcement that worked together to shut
push
down
hard on
the pill mill, and especially a big shout out to the association, which Jamal mentioned, Block Association or Neighborhood Association, that was very active.
Jim Hawkins.
Yes, in dealing with that. Thank you to the Borough President's Office for the data intern. It's working out wonderful, and we plan on proceeding with utilizing the data mapping to incorporate it in our statement of district needs a little more effectively. Another item for you is to bring up that our census, we're down to 44 members, but we have 43 active members. We have 10 committees and 3 task force. My board is having some challenges because I don't have the participants to really function. So it's getting a little difficult. I just wanted to raise that. I've been in discussion with the council member, and I think I brought that to the Borough President's Office, or to their awareness, that we need more individuals, and we was just wondering, are we gonna have to wait to the new recruitment, or would something,
When we talk about it, we'll try to figure out
okay,
something early.
thank you. Another item just quickly is that we held our elections. I'm happy to announce that I was re-elected for a 3rd term of Community Board 12, so I'm happy about that, to work with all of you for another, and probably that's it, because being a chair of a board, oh God. But moving forward, we're gonna be focusing on infrastructure. Workforce Center, immigration reform, programs and services, and data mapping. And I just wanna bring something up about the homelessness. You know, I'm a social worker, so clinically I have to ask myself, what about individuals not wanting to go into homeless shelters? You know, we have this spill of people all over the city of New York. But if you walk into these city shelters, I wouldn't want to live in there. You know, you want to create all these other and pour money everywhere else, We need to get in there and hold these folks accountable for the conditions of these shelters, for clinical services, for case management services, for mental health services. 32nd Street between 6th and 7th, outside it looks like it's a homeless shelter. From the corner all the way, people, it hurts. So you have to ask, why is a person who is in need of housing would not stay in there? Ask yourself that before we start, oh, well, they're all over the place. Well, the city of New York needs to find out what's up with these contracts. These people have these spaces. Are they providing adequate programs and services for the folks that need them?
I second.
I hear this all the time. Money over here, money over. Deal with the root of the issue. Hold individuals accountable. I mean, that's cruel and unusual punishment to go into a facility to see feces, urine. There's no counseling services. Or the people in there are not adequately trained to deal with the clients that come through the door. You see all these sub-occupations being created to save money to service the mentally ill?
Yes.
What is that about? How about the people that went to college to get master's degrees, PhDs, and all this clinical? They're not even servicing the clients anymore.
Yes.
They're giving out these minimum level of education, certifying people to treat people with severe mental health disorders. We should be concerned about that. And I close with that. Thank you so much.
Councilmember Mendes?
Yeah, just one quick announcement. There's actually proposed legislation from the city council to limit community board term, to propose a 12-year community board member term limit. So that's, will be on our community board agenda, but it's something that impacts all of us sitting at this table,
That's
so.
right.
I'm against it, just so you know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was
we know.
introduced yesterday.
Yes.
So it's unclear when we're gonna have a hearing. I'm personally against it. In the last 2 months, CB3 the other day celebrated Richard Ropiak, their 40 years. Last month,
Right.
celebrated Doris Diether on Community Board 250 years. They have valuable knowledge that they give to all the new members, and I'm against term limits altogether.
The borough presidents are gonna be writing
We
a
agree
letter,
with that.
all 5 borough presidents are against it, so we're gonna be writing a letter to that effect.
So I know Community Board 1 is also gonna look at it, but projects such as recuperating after Superstorm Sandy is definitely longer than a 12-year horizon, and it's taken over 12 years to get where we are in rebuilding the World Trade Center. So
We're very,
Yeah, getting a park is 7 years, so.
Councilmember?
Yeah, that's it.
That was one of the things I wanted to mention. The other thing is, just on the mayor's housing plan and how 2 sites are being looked at Community Board 3. We have long advocated for community-based planning. I go and I speak to my community boards, and it looks like the mayor's office is moving through with this housing plan, not having conversations with any of us
Got it.
as to what's appropriate sites. In a hearing back in February, he had DCAS, HPD, Department of Finance, and they were talking about all these empty lots or vacant lots. Most of them were community gardens, some of them weren't vacant and their data was wrong. And, I think it's a very dangerous road for many of us who've been, doing the community-based planning and working with our
we're
community.
gonna push that, Rosie, we got it, thank you. We're meeting.
So we had a very ambitious 2014 Borough Board. You have the year in review, over 20 presentations, 4 votes, 3 hearings. So you have that there, and
Thank you, Alder Bonilla.
with that, can we get a motion for adjournment?
Yes.
Yes, all right.
Sorry so long, thank you very much.